you ready for Solomon's
Porch Podcast.
Hey, giving the glory to God. Yeah, you're hanging with Jake.
Yeah, man. So I wanted to. So this week on Track Stars, there was a conversation that was taking place with in the comments section. They were talking about they had Ruslan, Mowgli the Iceberg, some people on there, and they were talking about business, right? They were talking about ranking and algorithms and this, that, and the other, and what you have to do to do music for full-time living, this, that, and the other. And there was a guy in the comments that was like, man, all these people are so focused on rankings and XYZ, yada yada yada, and they've lost the heart for ministry, they've lost the mission, and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, how do you know that? I'm like, first of all, how can you judge somebody's intention of what they're doing because they're trying to make sure they're making a living so they can feed their family, pay bills, things like that. And
well, yeah, I mean, and you just don't know. That was the point,
right? Exactly.
You don't know.
And so, but one of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about was, does rankings really matter? Do charts matter? Do making people's top list? All these things. There was also a huge controversy this past week about like a top 50s rapper list, top 50 CHH artist list, things like that. And so it was like, do these things really matter, right? There's a lot of things. There are a lot of scriptures that talk about not trying to be a friend of the world, not trying to do this, that, and the other. But there's also other things like where Jesus became very, very influential based on what he did for people. People wanted to come around Jesus, be around him. His name got around everywhere because of the good works he was doing, because of the things that he made happen, because of the wedding where he turned water into wine and fed 5,000 and fed 4,000 and all these things. And so he got his name out there. I mean, he would tell people not to put my name out there in some cases, but in general, like a lot of people found out about Jesus, and with that, people were able to hear his message and what he came to teach us and tell us, and then ultimately do for us. And so, but on a practical level, this is something that that I kind of think about. I don't know if I'd say struggle with, because I don't think it's wrong. But that's kind of why I figured we'd have this conversation, because even with our show, it's like, okay, maybe we should start looking at seeing if maybe we can get a greater reach in this. Because there have been a lot of times where like we've had conversations that were very discipleship focused and oriented. I mean, Aaron Simpkins told me that he decided to get baptized because he heard us talk about baptism on the show, and he had never done it before. Like, to me, this is a great discipleship tool.
Right.
We're able to have people come on the show who are not believers, and we can just have a conversation about faith and life and all sorts of stuff. We've done that twice. And so the question is, like, why do we do that? Well, because we want, we're hoping that Christians can have better conversations, more effective conversations with people outside the church, and that those outside the church don't feel like they can't have a conversation with those in the church. So it's a ministry tool in that aspect. But if nobody hears these conversations, if nobody hears this show, and the reasons why we're doing it isn't really getting out there, should we even be doing this? And so, in other words, do rankings really matter? Like, because if it does matter,
yeah, I don't know that that's necessarily the same equation. So when you're talking about a ministry, let's say just your average church today,
okay,
is in itself a business. It has its own sort of marketing, one way or another. It does. And so you're still always looking at numbers. You're still always looking at statistics. You're still looking at, okay, well, this age group is who gives the most tithe. How do we get these people involved? This is our, ratio of African-American to white folks to Hispanics. And, how do we, the dynamics of how we change things. And in terms of our show and even artists in general, they're looking at, okay, so where do I fall compared to other people? And that's really what that boils down to is what is it, because when you do a top list, I mean, so you look at around 5, and used car salespeople are like, well, dude, at least I was only number 4, man. Politicians made number 1. Or maybe they're like, darn it, politicians made number 1, man. That's jacked up. I should have been number 1. I don't know, whatever. But it's still about that comparison sort of thing. And the thing about, what we're doing here on the show is that we just don't care in terms of, how we're ranked. Don't get me wrong. We've like enjoyed joking about some stuff. We're like, number 3 in some third world country. Yeah. In terms of Christian. So you gotta pull that niche down even further. Just Christian podcasts in Tanzania. We're number 3, brah.
Christian podcast and talk about comics. We're number 3.
We're number 3. See, I'm just saying, right? I mean, boy, let's publicize that one.
So with rankings,
I love people in Tanzania, by the way. So
with rankings, and you probably said that was the country wrong. I don't even know. But
I don't even know. I don't remember where it was now.
So with rankings and top list, I think what we can learn from that is, okay, who were these lists being made by? Right? So a lot of ministries that have a specific focus. Like, some ministries are focused more toward, abused women. Some are there's a lot of ministries that are focused at youth. So it's like, okay, who are the youth listening to? Who's on their top ranking list? And why are those people on their list, right? You can learn kind of the habits, the preferences of these by looking at the list. And so, for example, like NF Let You Down. People liked it because not because of the message, but because of the way it sounded in the hook and all that stuff. In general, though, I think with ministries, you still have to look at what are the things that these kids like, what are the things that these people like, this demographic likes, enjoys, needs. What will they invest their time and whatever resources to, and try to figure out, like, okay, do we cater to that? Because ultimately, the goal of ministry, well, I would say overall, go out and make disciples of the world. You're supposed to spread the ministry of Christ throughout the whole world, right? And the rankings show, how much reach a show or an artist or whatever has. So you got 50 listeners. If you got 500 listeners is more of a reach than 50. Now,
yeah, but so much of that stuff is purely subjective as well, because as we all know, I mean, how much are they really listening to it? And just because you had people to listen to it, are they actual repeat listeners? And, how much of the show did they listen to? I only listen to the news section. Well, okay, so that means that they're not really getting the meat and potatoes at the end of our show. So, the amount of information that you get from a lot of that stuff is just, it's largely incomplete. I hate statistics anyway, and I hate it when people use statistics because usually they're misusing statistics.
I don't like statistics, but I enjoy looking at analytics. So
I don't know there's much difference.
Well, I mean, like seeing, okay, there's people in China who are on the website.
Well,
stuff like that. Just saying, oh man, how are we getting people in China to check out the website?
Okay, but again, it's still a statistic in a way, in that it's how many people in China are listening to your show. Well, I've got 3 people. Do we have 3 people in China listening to our show?
Could be bots. I don't know.
Don't know.
So the other thing too is
we've got 20,000 in Russia. Yeah. So I mean, we're like huge in Russia.
So another thing I think is kind of interesting to look at is when you're talking about the financial resources behind it. Talk about money, right?
Right.
So one of the things that like Trackstars wants to do is have actual Christian biblical based films. So like the story of Noah, that's actually biblically based, not completely fictional like the movie was, or like Exodus or whatever, things like that.
You're telling me that Russell Crowe's movie, no, it was fictional.
Yeah, pretty much.
I've never read the Bible, so I don't really know. But I thought that was pretty spot on, man.
So in general, though, but the thing is to have a movie studio,
I just love Russell Crowe. I mean, it had to be right because he was in it.
Sure, but to have a studio like a film studio like that, it's not cheap, right? So you got to have resources for it. And to do that, you got to have a business mindset. You got to have, how do we bring in more revenue for XYZ? And I think that's where a lot of people kind of mistake like business and ministry, and are they non-compatible? So, but like, any pastor would tell you, I was talking to a pastor one time, kind of my calling to maybe start a church one day, but, I don't feel 100% like I'm supposed to start a brand new church. I said, but I went to school for business instead of ministry. He said, but that's good. He was like, everybody who leads any type of group, organization, company, anything, it needs to have some type of business behind it.
Right.
And, but even ministry takes in, you need financial resources to do ministry. So there,
and to be able to manage those funds appropriately, because honestly, that's where a lot of churches get in trouble, is that they're just not managed very well.
I heard this morning there was a pastor, the church that I go to now, the building itself was actually another church. The pastor of that church had to file bankruptcy because there were tons of monies in debt. And then he ends up going to another city in North Carolina, does the same exact thing within like a year and a half of taking over that church or starting a church there or something like that.
Wow.
And because he just wasn't good with the business end of things, with financial resources, things like that. But I think for, when Christians hear conversations, and kind of my main point in this is that whenever you hear people talk about business, right, in ministry or sales or things like that, like, money is used to continue funding ministry. I mean, you can't really feed the homeless with nothing.
Good intentions don't feed them.
Right. You can't start a women's home with nothing. You have to have financial resources.
Right.
And when you're not, especially when you're doing like media, like what we're doing, I mean, if we decided we want to become a nonprofit and help fund these things, we'd have to have resources coming in.
Well,
now, I'm not asking for resources, people. Please don't mistake that.
Even to expand our outreach, so we've looked at other avenues of being able to put the podcast into different media situations,
Right?
And inevitably, all those folks are asking, "Okay, we're interested, we're down, but can you tell us?" Where do you fall in all of this stuff?
Right.
We're number 3 in Tanzania.
So in that case,
I
when you look at
happen to have
investors-
left off that it had to be Christian and talking about comics, but we're still number 3 in Tanzania.
And when you look at investors, people who might be funding, whatever you got going on, they're going to look at those numbers and stuff.
They need numbers. They understand that you initially are coming to this with good intentions, because otherwise there's no point in you doing this, right?
And think about it this way: even Christian investors, they need to make their money back. Why? So they can refund you and somebody else.
Right.
See, that's the thing. It's not just that they want to make money.
Right.
Even Christian investors need to make, but they need to make profit. They need to have a return on their investment so they can continue funding other Christian ministries.
Right.
And so, like, you think about Chick-fil-A, they make a nice profit. They give a lot of it away.
Yeah.
But I don't see nowhere near as many people complaining about Chick-fil-A making money as they do like Christian websites or Christian media outlets or like PureFlix or whatever. Like, they don't really complain as much about like a Chick-fil-A than they do those, even though Chick-fil-A is pretty explicitly Christian, I would say.
Yeah, that's it.
So, but in general, though, when you hear people talk about business and marketing and strategy and all these different avenues in the area of business, even when they're doing ministry and involved in ministry, please don't think it's just them trying to make money or trying to matter to rankings and that. Like Track Stars, they don't care if they're number 1 podcast on the planet if it's not reaching anybody.
Right.
If they're not making a difference in anybody's life. But in order for people to find the podcast, the radio show, the TV channel, or the TV show that they are now, rankings do matter to those who have the authority to put people in places. Now, ultimately, I think with God's favor, you get that, but I feel like rankings, in a way, still has its place even in ministry. Google rankings, I mean, churches even on Google get ranked. So,
oh yeah, I've ranked a few,
so in general, though,
and a few have been ranked.
So yeah, man. So I don't know. That's kind of my 2 cents on the matter. Any last second thoughts?
Last second, no, because we've only got like a minute left on the show.
Yeah, man. Well, look, let us know what you think in the comments. Share if you care. If you don't, then you won't.